Hello everyone and welcome to That Startup Show. I'm Ray Johnston and this is my co-host, Benjamin Law.
Co-host? Oh, thank God, I thought maybe this was a date.
No, Ben, we're hosting a show.
All right, I just assumed this was just what straight relationships were like. You just get a bunch of people together and they applaud your traditional lifestyle.
Close. Look, tonight we'll be getting in touch with our bodies, but possibly via email, because we're talking Bodytech, HealthTech, Biotech and MedTech, and just maybe we're going to find out what it means to be human.
We'll be asking questions like, is it ethical to clone yourself? And is it ethical if you're only doing it so you have someone to handle the accounts?
My favourite piece of health tech is a diet app that recognises the food you're eating, because sometimes I don't even know what the things are that I've cooked. And I'm like, should pasta be fizzy?
No. How do you feel about LV, a pelvic floor exercise device that gives you points for squeezing at the right time? That's right, it's like Guitar Hero for your genitals.
Look, Ben, well, when I was a kid, if you wanted Guitar Hero for your genitals, you had to get out there and play Guitar Hero with your genitals.
The good old days.
But this field, it even includes genetic engineering. What do you think of designer babies, Ben?
Well, I think their berets are very cute, but their stubby arms can't reach the drawing board. Thanks, I'll be here all series.
All right. What about the company Darwin Life that's offering mothers the chance to have a child with 3 genetic parents?
I don't know how I feel about leaving DNA mixing in the hands of some startup company.
Yeah, I reckon it's much better to leave it to drunk teenagers in station wagons in paddocks.
I'm a Queenslander and that's our long-standing tradition.
Well, we're obviously getting to the bottom of a lot of big stuff already, but there's plenty more to discuss.
I find that very hard to believe.
If you want to join in the conversation or complain about Ben's designer baby joke, you can do it by tweeting us at TSU Show or using the hashtag #ThatStartupShow.
And soon we will be introducing our stellar panellists, but first we're going to find out how to control tech just by waving a chip in your hand.
A technology that was previously only available for controlling hungry seagulls. Let's cross to our correspondent, Garry Williams from Innovation and the Melbourne Science Gallery, who's out there amongst our audience. Are the chips down there, Gaz?
Well, thanks for having me, you two. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were genetically engineered to crush this. Now, I'm here with my brand new and great friend, Amir. Amir, I've heard that you're well on your way to becoming a cyborg by having chips implanted into your hand. First question, most important one, can I touch it?
Absolutely, you can. Just don't tell my wife.
Oh, there we go.
Grain of rice.
It's tiny. So small.
Please.
So on a serious note, Amir, tell us about this chip and what you use it for from day to day.
Sure. We had that chip put in probably about a year ago, and since then I've been experimenting many things, from opening the front door to the house, accessing our work and building, launching my digital business card if I meet someone, so I don't have to carry around pieces of old school paper with me, through to sending an email and calling my wife with my hand, which she finds very annoying. The serious note is allowing, I guess, your physiology and biology to be tracked and sort of providing health data so that if you're about to have a stroke or a heart attack, potentially this technology will be able to save your life.
This evening, we're going to have a live human to cyborg transition. So we've got a resident chippy here, Pete. What do you intend to do with this chip from day to day, Frank?
Well, in the name of science and tech for first, but I think I'm going to choose to call my mom with it, tell her I'm fine.
Adorable. Thank you very much, Ray-Ban.
Wow.
Thanks, Garry. It's time to meet our incredible guests who will be judging our pitches tonight and, with any luck, giving us tips on transcending these damn flesh prisons we call bodies.
Flesh prisons. I think I've seen those videos.
Our first panellist is a global health tech entrepreneur and has been ranked one of the top 50 Australia and New Zealand women in tech. She speaks 5 Asian languages, making her a quintuple threat to becoming my new hero. She's the co-founder of global health platform HealthKit that's transforming healthcare for practitioners and patients in 50 countries. Please welcome Alison Hardacre.
Selamat datang, Alison. Selamat dulu. Our second guest is a human-centred designer and academic working at the nexus of design, health and technology. She's made swallowable devices to detect disease and biosignal sensing emergency jewellery, meaning your fashion choices could actually send a call for help as opposed to just being a cry for help. She has most recently designed Facett, the world's first modular hearing aid, which has won more awards than we can name. Please welcome Leah Heiss.
So, team, we often ask if technology is going to change what it means to be human, but has it already, and how?
I think it already has. You look back at what diseases existed 50 years ago. I mean, the smallpox injection was technology. I don't know anybody who's had smallpox. In 20 years' time, people won't have heard of chickenpox, for example. And now that technology has moved from biotech into medtech, into Facett, for example, as well as into things that people are doing with healthcare technology as well.
Leah, tell us more about Facett. Like, what was the original kernel of the idea and how did you develop it?
So it's the world's first self-fit modular hearing aid, which means it's a hearing aid that enables people that have tactile insensitivity or arthritis to change their own batteries. And that doesn't sound like a huge deal for lots of people, but if you can't change your own batteries, then you have to wait for many days sometimes until someone comes to change them for you, which means being deaf for the intervening days.
We're going to talk more about those issues, but for now we're going to play a game called Unintended Side Effects, where we all take expired medication I found at the back of my grandma's medicine cabinet.
No, Ben, it's the other game.
Okay, I may need to call an ambulance.
Look, we all know that occasionally the time comes when your business has to pivot. So we're going to give you the name of either a product or a company.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell us what they did before their pivot. So let's test our buzzers. Alison?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Now, first up, the company that became Twitter started life as what?
000.
000?
Yeah, electronic version 000 online. Global version.
Wow.
And then they realised that people might die because that's the most important consideration in healthcare technology. And it became Twitter and it became all about cat videos.
Oh, fantastic. Does that fly with your interpretation?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I was just sort of ticking over and I was thinking, accounting, no. But 000 sounds right to me.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Oh. So it started off saving lives, whereas now you log on and you just want to die. No! It started life as a network called Audio, where people could find and subscribe to podcasts.
Brilliant.
Probably should have stayed that way. Next up, Viagra, which I think we all know. But what was its original purpose?
Something to help children with ADHD in the playground.
Wow, that would have been a really interesting testing ground.
There we go.
Scary stuff. I'm going to go serious this time. I think it's about pumping more blood to the heart. So it's life-saving as opposed to sex life-saving.
Very
Yes.
close. It was a heart medication to treat angina, but once Pfizer realised it could cure erectile dysfunction, they saw the potential for, we're going to call it growth in other areas.
Next question. Magic, an on-demand personal assistant that will not do anything that's not illegal. That will do anything that's not illegal.
I was going to say.
What did they start out as?
Accounting software?
Things usually do before they become sentient and kill us all, that's true.
I'm going with accounting software too. I mean, what more could you need in life?
Magic actually entered Y Combinator as a connected blood pressure monitor app called Bettier.
There you go. Moving on, the chainsaw, also known as the reason why lumberjacks give you a high 4. Sorry. What was the chainsaw originally designed to do?
It was actually invented in France. And it was designed to kill people in the French Revolution.
Oh, wow.
1789, that kind of time frame.
I've played that video game.
Haven't we all?
Any ideas?
No, I'm sorry, I'm passing this time.
It was actually invented to cut through bone. The osteome was a hand-cranked chainsaw developed for surgery in 1830 by Bernhard Heine. The chainsaw would go on to have starring roles in movies such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Pinocchio 2: Geppetto's Revenge.
And finally, Instagram, the company that created the need for the hashtag no filter picture, the company that created a lot of interesting filters and some surprisingly trendy baby names like Amaro, Kelvin, Sierra, and X Pro 2. What did it begin as?
Annotatable body charts for doctors so that they can mark where somebody has a condition. We've just been on Instagram together speaking Cantonese.
Okay, that's right. Check it out. It's my Insta stories. That is surprisingly, absolutely incorrect. It was originally Bourbon, a complicated location-based app similar to Foursquare. Users really only liked the photo sharing function and single-handedly changed the reason people bought dogs, had kids and ate food.
Now it's time for part 1 of the pitch ring.
Welcome to the pitch ring. It's time to meet the 3 entrepreneurs who drink the status quo and ooze innovation. They've disrupted more industries than you've had Uber Eats deliveries. They came to pitch ideas and network, and now they're all out of business cards.
Tonight's winner will not only go into our season grand finale with a chance to win some incredible prizes, but they'll also take home the coveted prize that proves they are the Australian version of the unicorn, the Uniroo.
Everyone say, ooh. It's a beauty. Our panel will be judging the ideas on originality, marketability, scalability, and potential to be turned into an episode of Black Mirror. The rules are simple.
You have 2 minutes maximum. At 20 seconds to go, you'll hear this sound. Rule number 3, bonus points if you can provide an easier way to opt out of the Australian government's My Health record.
I actually really want to know. The panel will give each contestant feedback after their pitch. Now let's meet our first pitcher.
Our first pitcher is pioneering the future of medicinal marijuana, but please don't sidle up to him afterwards and ask if he's available for a joint venture. Please welcome Adam Miller.
Hi guys, my name's Adam and I'm here to talk about seedlings. But before I tell you what seedlings is, I want to share with you a story. This is Kaitlin Lambert. At the age of 6 months old, Kaitlin was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome, which is a life-threatening form of epilepsy. At one point, Kaitlin was having about 1,000 seizures a day. That's a seizure every 15 seconds. Out of desperation, her father, Michael, resorted to medicinal cannabis after no pharmaceutical drugs worked for Kaitlin. And the results? After 4 years, Kaitlin's only had 4 seizures, and her hospital attendance rate has dropped by 100%. Can I get a show of hands very quickly? Has anyone heard of a story like this or had a loved one who have been affected by medical cannabis in their life? Yeah, me too, which is why I got involved in this space. And over the last 3 years, I opened up Australia's first medical cannabis advisory firm. We've helped more than 12 companies launch into the space, and we've also generated roughly $200,000 in revenue. Additionally, I helped launch the Medical Cannabis Council, which is the country's first national association to represent the cannabis industry. We're also a not-for-profit. We've raised $50,000 to date, and we also have around 100 members under our organization. We're also running Australia's first medical cannabis tech conference, which is called Canatech. These are all some of the success points of the industry, and the objective is to build an ecosystem, which is why I'm here today to pitch to you a cannabis startup hub. My original vision was to empower entrepreneurs to get involved in this incredible space, which is why we are building Seedlings. Seedlings will be Australia's first cannabis startup tech hub, located right here in Melbourne. We've collaborated with York Butter Factory, a local co-working space, and are developing a startup hub for entrepreneurs in this industry. Now, this is a very incredible space, and I'm very, very privileged to be involved with it. The industry itself, I believe, will change the life of millions, not just as a medicine, but as a textile, as a replacement for plastics, as a replacement for fuels. The list goes on and on. And we want to empower entrepreneurs and give them the opportunity to get involved in this incredible space. We are a great team of 3, and we have a fantastic advisory board. Some of our advisors are Helen Kapelos, Mark Cook, who's a professor at Melbourne University, and Professor Iqbal Ramzan from the University of Sydney. What we're looking for tonight is to connect with curious entrepreneurs, investors, and startups who want to learn more about this space. Additionally, we also want to connect with people that are interested to learn more generally about this incredible plant and this industry. My name's Adam, and I am here to present Seedlings. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Adam. Alison, that was pretty compelling. Do you have any questions?
Congratulations on your pitch, well done, and congratulations on having so many people here to support you. It's very exciting. You mentioned that within the ecosystem that you've already built, there's 12 companies, and you said revenue of $200,000 across those 12 companies, yeah? What are some of those companies doing, and is it direct to consumer, or is it selling through practitioners, or how are you leveraging the health system to build your products out there for consumers?
Thanks for asking that question. We've actually worked with a diverse range of companies. Some are pharmaceutical-style companies developing therapies using cannabinoids, which are the molecules from the cannabis plant. Another group that we've worked with is developing a hemp kombucha, so quite an interesting product. And another company that we've worked with is building a platform on the blockchain to collate patient data so that we have a better understanding of how these chemicals work with different patient sets. So it's quite diverse, but we built the Medical Cannabis Council as an access portal to connect industry to government, to patients, and to other groups that can help them grow their business. So that's how we're helping activate those companies and the kind of companies that we've worked with.
Thank you, Adam. What about you, Leah? Are you ready to invest in high finance?
Yeah, I'm impressed and I'm compelled. I have 2 questions, 2 quick ones, and one really is about the heart of the project. And it started with heart, and it started with this sense of personal investment and emotional engagement with someone that you're very close to. How do you maintain that sense of heart and ethical integrity as this grows and it becomes about so many different micro businesses?
It's very challenging, to be truthful with you. We try and put patients first and ask what's the most valuable outcome for a patient and how do we build a model around that. So human-centered design. But I have my healthy days of skepticism and questioning of my own values and what I'm trying to do, but bringing it back to the patient really helps, because as you do grow and the focus becomes commercialization, especially when you're dealing with listed companies, there's a profit incentive. So again, looking at what the patients need first and then growing from there. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for listening.
Please come back. Now it's time to check in with Gaz on the floor to see how far our audience has journeyed in their quest to be the next step in human evolution.
Hi gang, having a great time here, super casual. We're going to see the transition from human to cyborg. How are you feeling at the moment, cyborg? Frank?
A bit nervous, but equally excited. All in the name of tech and science in human evolution, yeah.
That's right. No pain, no gain, Frank, and you've passed the opt-out time. Take it away, Pete. Gather around really close. Oh, I should have cautioned that there will be blood. Wow. Just like Amir, you've made the congratulations, you're successfully a cyborg. Gang, I'm feeling super unwell. So let's go back to the desk. Back to you, Ben Ray.
Thanks, Gary. You're watching That Startup Show, perfectly normal That Startup Show, where we cast a critical eye over the startup world like it's a stranger with a dark secret who's just stepped into a saloon.
Our second picture is making life better for newborn babies, something I have been doing by avoiding them. I am vaccinated. Please welcome Wei Su.
Many of you here are parents and would know that having a baby is usually a happy occasion. Unfortunately, about 10% are born premature, and many babies require urgent delivery of drugs and nutrients to survive. To do this, doctors place central lines, but about 40% of these procedures are currently misplaced. This can have severe consequences, including repeat procedures, complications, and in some cases, even death. This is why we're creating NeoNav. NeoNav removes the guesswork from central line placement procedures, and it works a little bit like cars' parking sensors using intravascular ECG signals to provide real-time, accurate feedback during the procedure itself. We've worked closely with clinical staff from hospitals in Australia and the US to design a simple user interface that provides a red light to indicate an incorrect location and a green light to confirm correct placement. We've also validated this clinical need and our solution with leading hospitals in Australia and in the US, including the Texas Children's Hospital, which is one of the leading neonatal intensive care units in the world. We've also completed an animal pilot study at Monash and will be commencing clinical observation study at the Royal Women's Hospital. We've also been working with product development firms to design and develop a clinical prototype, and in the last 2 years, we've successfully completed 3 accelerator programs, raised $400,000, and will be looking to raise more money in our angel round later this year. My name is Wei, and I'm a proud co-founder at Navi Medical Technologies. Please join us in helping to create a brighter and healthier life for children everywhere. Thank you.
Leah, do you have any questions?
I do. An amazing technology. And I think, what I really want to know is how can you get this out of the accelerator land and just across the planet? So you've talked about that you've been through 3 accelerator programs. And as we know, it can take between 7 and 10 years to get one of these types of medical technologies to the world and to really infiltrate the market and to start to change lives. So what's the next step? How do you get it out there to the worldwide market?
So as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to raise our angel round, and a large part of that is to raise the capital required to actually progress product development. So our most immediate milestone in the next 12 months is really to work towards a clinical prototype, and that will be put towards a clinical trial. So the clinical trial, as all of you here would be familiar, is really the gateway to getting a medical device to the market. And with that, we'll be looking at collecting clinical evidence that we can then make regulatory submissions for. And we're looking to do that firstly in the European market and in the Australian market.
How about you, Alison?
Sure. Thank you so much. Sounds like a great concept.
Thank you.
Critical to this will be having the right team in place. So tell me about their backgrounds.
So we're a team of 6 co-founders. And while that may sound like a slightly large group to begin with, we've got a number of co-founders who have a science and engineering background, and we've got 2 Masters of Biomedical Engineering graduates from the Melbourne University. So I think we've got the right mix of expertise.
Thank you so much. Can you please join us in thanking Wei?
With Alison and Leah, 2 absolute body tech forces, and we're going to pick their brains.
Hand me the digital brain fork. Leah, the world of body tech is vast. There's health, there's medical, there's biotech. How is our technology changing our relationship to our bodies right now?
So it's a really interesting question that really has 2 prongs. And the first is how do you differentiate between health tech, biotech and med tech? And we've discussed this earlier that it's pretty hard to do that. But I mean, in layman's terms, the way that I think about these are that health tech is really consumer, fast-moving consumer tech, health tech products that we're using in the home and on the body. Med tech is really about diagnostic drug delivery and other types of products that we're using either in clinical settings or the home. And bio is about biomolecular innovation and packaging it up for...
And within those silos, I imagine there's a lot of overlap, is that right?
There's heaps of overlap, yeah. And in terms of how is it changing our bodies, I mean, I'd like to say that actually we have had extended bodies and extended minds since we've had the abacus. So we're scaffolding tech, but... we're yet to see what it's actually doing to our plastic brains.
Right. Yeah. So when you're talking about the abacus, you mean there has been technology that has augmented how our brains work, how we extend memory, how we extend language and function and all that stuff. That's been there for a long, long time.
Yes. But with the pace of change now, what we're not really across, or what we don't really know, is the full extent of which it's starting to be, it's starting to augment the brain and change the plastic brain.
Now, Alison, health costs are rising all over the world. How can body-related technology help cure this problem?
Sure. I mean, health costs grow at 2 times CPI. Which means that there's a significant burden on governments and on taxpayers. But more importantly, it means that people aren't getting access to the healthcare that they need. And so it's actually a question of efficiency in the whole healthcare system. And it's such a fragmented market. So GPs, for example, most of us have seen a GP this year. GPs, most are in sole or small practice. And so they're having to do a lot and they're not getting efficiencies. And we've looked at it and we found that with efficiencies, they can get back an hour a day. The biggest issue in healthcare is actually a structural one, that doctors don't need more patients, but patients need more doctors. And so if you can make practitioners more efficient in the way they practice, they can treat more patients, which means that people can get better healthcare. And part of that has been that there have been a really strong growth in medical devices so people can run their own healthcare. And that's fantastic. And it's we were talking before about segmentation of patients. There's a group called the Worried Well, which is what a lot of people are. It's I'd just like to lose a few kilos or, become fitter, etc. It's your Strava app. But there's a whole lot of people out there that deal with very complex conditions, and that's where a lot of the costs are. And I think by providing technology for them to manage their own healthcare, they don't need to rely on the health system and doctors so much and can be in control of their own healthcare. So it's a really exciting time to be living, but at the same time, it does require a lot of regulation to ensure that the right innovations are getting out there. And most importantly, companies that are building innovations need to be thinking about how they're distributing those products, which is some of the questions we've been asking the pitches tonight.
Leah, Alison, we were talking about ways to augment the body. I mean, the abacus is one kind of technology. We've seen a very, very different example of augmenting the body tonight by implanting a chip. This is a slight tangent, but how do we feel about people doing things like this? Okay, so that's apparently real, and that's called bagalizing. It's all the rage in Japan, but when I say all the rage, I'm not sure it's mainstream, but it's happening. How do we feel about this? How should we feel about that kind of body augmentation?
Interesting. So when we think about augmenting the body, there's a really interesting debate that's going on about that we can augment the body up to normal, but not beyond normal. And so if you have a disability, it's okay that you're brought up to normal and you get some, fantastic, if you have no legs, you get some fantastic, carbon fibre legs. But if you become superhuman, then you're disqualified from races because you're better than the other humans. And so this type of thing here is a really interesting bagalizing or, prosthetic horns or whatever those things might be. They're looking at this sort of augmentation as a fashion statement. It's
not a health benefit as such, but for them an aesthetic benefit. I guess that's why they're doing it.
It could be about aesthetics, and it can also be about identifying with subcultures. So I think it's a really interesting area to keep an eye on. The area that is very interesting is if you start to cross those things over. So if the bagel starts to be a drug delivery device, I mean, there's some interesting opportunities there.
Right, or it becomes, I don't know, like a 4G network that you carry around with yourself.
Hey, that's an idea.
Absolutely.
I mean, from my perspective, that looked to be, and no, I'm no fashion expert, but that looked to be, a fashion statement rather than, anything to do with, medical innovation, for example. And, I think over time people are doing a lot more things that it's very hard to see what the purpose is of it. But at the same time, as Leah was saying, there's now so many devices and mobility devices, for example, that can help people with disabilities. And I used to be on the board of an organisation for people with disabilities. And I think we should be talking to people with disabilities about what they want. We don't know what it is to live that life and to walk in those shoes. And if there's a technology that can make their lives so much easier, so much more independent, so that they're not the disabled person, they're John, who happens to have a disability, then I don't think we should be judging them for that. And I think, it's one of the wonders of the age that we live in, that there are so many opportunities, and technology is speeding things up. So that we can get the right technologies, the right devices out to the right people, be that in Australia, be that in Laos or Africa. And I think that's what it's about. It's about making people's lives better, even if that means putting a bagel on your head.
Yeah. So let's go a step further. What about gene modification tech? Can we just build ourselves better, stronger, faster, crisper? Could you take a moment to explain a little bit to our audience about what CRISPR is and what it might mean for us?
It's about, as I understand, it's about the DNA and removing parts of the DNA that, or splicing them off so that they don't act. And that means people's lives are going to be a lot better. And again, it gets back to the idea that we live in this world where that's possible now. And I think, if we were talking 30 or 40 years ago about some of the technologies that were available, people were fearful of that, just as people are fearful now. And there will be mistakes in technology, but there will be amazing innovations. I think the key thing, though, when you look at healthtech or bodytech, is that people's lives are affected. If we're looking at a fintech innovation, it's just their money. This is their life, this is their livelihood.
The stakes are much higher.
That's exactly right. And that means that we do need to be having much more nuanced conversations about this area.
I mean, when we're talking about mistakes, how has the bodytech sector been scarred by something like the Theranos scandal and what happened there? And what's the fastest way to heal from something like that? Maybe some sort of collagen gel.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, even just thinking about, the CRISPR debate and the ethics around CRISPR, come back to this idea of what is normal. And it's seen as okay to be able to trim the genes that are impacting on people and giving them disabilities or illnesses, but not to trim the ones that give you a different kind of hair colour or eye colour, whatever it might be. So that's an interesting debate.
All development is trial and error, but as you say, Alison, the errors have high stakes. So how do you proceed forward in a world where you have to get mistakes done, but mistakes can really cost people their quality of life or perhaps their life?
They can indeed. And I think, the medical trials process has pros and cons. Obviously, it has to be incredibly rigorous to ensure that when these med techs and health techs are distributed to the world and to people, that they don't have an adverse impact on quality of life. The counter to that is that it can take 7 to 10 years for a tech to go from idea through to market. And so you have that period of time where people's lives can actually...
They miss out.
Yeah, it can be degenerating over time. So, we have an imperfect system.
I think your point raises the issue of why health technology and the health sector is so difficult to innovate in. People talk about the hockey stick, go small dip, then up. Well, in healthcare, it's a long hockey stick lying down. There's a lot of development before you get that uptick. And it's because patient safety is the most important thing. And that has to be at the heart of everything. It means you can't just whip out an MVP, for example. You have to make sure that it's got much more value, which means it's much more complex, which means that there's less money that has been invested in this space over time. That's now changing, fortunately, but it's very difficult to build an innovation because it's also hard to get distribution as well. You mentioned before about Theranos, and I've just read the book called Bad Blood about it. And what fascinated me was not so much the health issues around it, but more that there were signs throughout that company's time that this was not a company that you wanted to be associated with, that there was a lot of possibly fraud, allegedly, a lot of really difficult problems around management. And yet that wasn't how it was portrayed in the media. That wasn't how the media talked about it. And that wasn't how startups in talked about it at all. And it was seen as the company that we should all be emulating. And yet this came out and it crashed down the house of cards. I think that could happen in so many sectors. And I think that's more about startup culture and, everybody running around saying, oh, I'm killing it. And then the company dies 2 weeks later. That's not what it's about. It's about building businesses and services that have real impact on society. And if you do that, that's how you build a business that changes the world. And it's a business that changes the world. And that was my issue with Theranos.
So, Leah, there are wearables now whose mission it is to monitor stress levels, but I want to know, is the answer to stress really more devices?
I would say no. Yeah, a bit of yoga, a bit of meditation might do a better job. It really comes back to, again, are devices the answer to these big issues? And we've been having conversations about there's really a sort of a focus on accelerators and building more devices and doing it quickly, and not this show, but that the idea of do a pitch and get it to market quickly. And what's actually happening, particularly in sectors like aged care, is that you've got cupboards full of devices that no one uses because there is very little engagement with end users who are dealing with that issue. And so I think we can design more wearables, we can make them look better, but we need to spend a whole lot more time with people to understand the human condition of stress and why are they stressed, and maybe there's 4 or 5 different approaches to managing that stress as opposed to just getting another device.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been having conversations with Fitbit that have been quite interesting.
Yeah, they've described themselves to me as a data collection company rather than a fitness wearables company. And it makes me wonder, does the benefits that this huge data pool that Fitbit has, the benefits that might have for the public or the greater good, does that outweigh our right to privacy and the risks associated with that? Is it a cause for concern?
I think the most important thing is about being open and obtaining consent for that use of that data. I think data in this space is really powerful. I mean, organisations that have said that health data has more power to change lives than drug innovations alone. I know with our software, we can see where there are practitioner shortages, for example. We can start to see where there are disease clusters. So that data is really powerful. But it's also important to use it in the right way. And that's to make healthcare better. And that's to make patient lives better. And it's not to line the pockets of others outside of that space. So getting back to your question about Fitbit, yes, they're right. Wouldn't it be amazing if Fitbit could see that you are X age, X gender, and that you are having difficulty, I don't know, in your spin class, for example, and then it knew that other people who met that demographic improved in a certain way, and then you could take that wide knowledge that exists and improve your own life, not just necessarily in a spin class, but imagine if that were diabetes or something that is really potentially life debilitating. It has so much power. I think, though, that we're at the start of a conversation about health data, and it's a really nuanced conversation, but the most important thing is to be very open about all of that and to protect patient identity in doing so.
Now, we're talking about health data, but what about genetic data? What are the implications of a company owning our genetic information? Like, do we own our own genome? Tongue twister for you there.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a really interesting space because it is, again, about sort of augmenting, and it's going beyond the skin of the body. And we are already beyond the skin of the body, and all of these technologies are enabling us to inhabit spaces that we've never inhabited before. But again, this sort of data is quite a new onion skin to that set of complex problems. And I think that we probably don't own all of our data, and that we haven't for a while, but we haven't realised it, and we haven't really thought about the implications of it.
But when we're talking about genetics, we're talking about ourselves, like the map of who we are. Like, if a company accesses that, are we allowed to own that? I mean, we're already volunteering our DNA when we do like ancestry kits and things like that.
If someone makes a clone of us, who owns the clone?
Well, there's criminal law issues involved with that, because I remember reading about serial killer in California who was caught because his relatives had used a service such as like 23andMe, or not that quite, to work out, to see what their diseases were, but that also meant that the DNA of the killer could be linked up to those relatives of his. So we're really not aware of all of the implications of our data. And personally, I think the conversations over the last 3 or 4 months in particular, about Facebook, etc., as well as other health data and data more generally, have been fantastic, because we need to have these conversations. It is really important for people to understand the potential for data, but also how important it is for your identity to not be linked to that.
Can I say something ridiculous here?
Yes, go for it.
Here's a safe space.
Okay. So the idea that our DNA is our DNA, every year we shed about 4.3 kilos of skin cells. So our DNA is distributed, across Melbourne, across the world. So we do not end at the boundary here. So it's really interesting when you start to think about...
We're already porous.
Wow. You and I are intermingling.
Well, it's interesting, like you look at the BRCA1 gene, which is a gene about breast cancer. And the company that discovered that then sought to patent it. And then it meant that people who happened to have that gene had something that legally wasn't theirs in their own body, and yet they were born with that. And then there becomes the issue of how do you encourage innovation? Because you need people to be able to protect their own innovation in order to encourage innovation, so that people with the BRCA1 gene can actually be treated in a way so that it doesn't cause breast cancer or doesn't kill them. And so it's an interesting conundrum.
So given the concerns about privacy, but also, the advertised benefits of public health information sharing, I wanted to ask you both a bit of a personal question here. Will you be opting in or out of My Health Record?
And you can tell us, it's not like you're on TV.
And I think I'll opt in. Yeah, I believe in that sense that if we collectively assimilate all of this knowledge and learning, that some good will come from that. And also, I'm just hopeless with paperwork. And I think if I can actually go here, there and everywhere and see a doctor and they can instantly access my record, I'm actually quite okay with
You're
that.
not worried about that data being breached?
I'd be interested to see the algorithms as well behind it. But I think, there's going to have to be a level of trust. There's also going to have to be a level of uptake to make it work. And I think I'm going to be on the uptake side.
Right.
I will be opting in, personally. I, like Leah, know the value of health data. I don't have any particular conditions, but if, for example, I had diabetes, to actually effectively manage my diabetes, I'd be having to complete 140 minutes of data entry a day. And so health devices help to solve that. But I'd also be having to deal with a GP, a nephrologist, a diabetes educator, as well as other health practitioners, and repeating my stories over and over again. If my health record develops in the way that it should, which is to be a full single patient record system, I think it really has so much potential for people with conditions. I don't have any conditions like that, but I may in 20, 30 years' time, and I want there to be that longevity of health data so that they can see if there were any signs early enough. And that's not just for my own benefit, that's for the benefit of medical science. Where this is a very topical conversation. And a couple of days ago, Minister Hunt announced that the law is going to be changed so that health data can only be accessed by police and the ATO with a warrant. Thank God. When I read that last week, that was not the case, and I work in this space, and I did not know that. Yes, there's a policy, but I did not know that was not enshrined in legislation. I was concerned. But at the same time, I was very impressed that there was such an early response to that concern being raised.
Now those concerns are alleviated?
For me, yes.
For you. We made a terrible joke about designer babies before, but say, we venture further into that realm of making designer babies. Who owns the IP of that baby? Parents, the company responsible for making that baby, the baby?
Yeah, it's interesting too. And, from an intellectual property perspective, can we put a design registration on that baby? Can we patent the baby?
Can we trademark the baby?
Can we trademark the baby? Like, what are we talking in terms of that sort of intellectual property? Because I guess realistically, it depends what happens in the laboratory and what kind of protections the laboratory has on its on its processes. So we have process as well as outcome, which I think is really kind of interesting.
And then what complicates this discussion is we're talking about ethical boundaries, but we're developing these technologies in different jurisdictions with different laws and different ethical values.
And then what if one of them has that gene that's already been patented?
Yeah.
This is all just too much. Look, thank you, Leah and Alison. We're going to be back soon with our third pitch, and our panel's going to decide on the winner. But first, here's the superior Alan Jones with the timeless story of racing to market, the tortoise and the hare.
Oh, hello, founders. I didn't see you there. Don't you love a good race to market? I've got a story about a race. Would you like to hear it? It's called The Tortoise and the Hare. Once upon a time, there were two startups. Harebrained, a creative development agency run by Don Hare, the flamboyant son of a disgraced former major advertising CEO, who's therefore often known as Hare's heir, and Teacher Tortoise, based around Lotus Tortoise Nguyen's software-based development and design. One day, they both discovered at Disruptorama Conceptathon that they were both planning to launch cryptographic security for startup concepts. They soon realized that a race to the market was on. Tortoise didn't let this faze her, continuing on with a methodical development as per her plan. But Hare knew that with a few stimulant-fueled all-nighters, his team could smash Tortoise's delivery dates by weeks. It would almost be enough to get complacent, but Hare was well aware of the old story they talked about in business school, where for some reason they decided a 2,600-year-old fable about animals had some pertinence to 21st century business. He felt, not without good cause, that the message of the fable was not so much slow and steady wins the race, but rather don't stuff around like an idiot. Hare went on to prove that in fact fast and faster wins the race. He was indeed first to market and was inundated with creatives wanting their precious billion-dollar ideas protected in the blockchainiest way possible. But unfortunately, the coding contained a fatal flaw, and dozens of concepts that hadn't been able to attract finance were let loose on the internet, where any random person could stumble on them and waste years of their own life trying to sell them. It turned out, harebrained was practically a synonym for reckless foolhardiness. Tortoise learned from Hare's mistakes, and her product launched immediately as Hare's hit the skids. But unfortunately, by that point, investors had all soured on the idea of cryptographic concept protection, and Tortoise went bankrupt too. So, the moral of this story is races do not make good business models. The end. Now, little startups, it's time for bed. But I've managed to get a hold of some of Hare's energy drink cocktails, so I don't see why we can't meet this impossible deadline ourselves. Let's not go to bed.
Our final pitcher tonight wants to not only make cycling, skiing and all snow sports safer, but cooler too. Please welcome Robert Joseph.
88% of all snow sports related deaths are due to head injuries, and 56% of all traumatic brain injuries can be reduced by the use of a helmet. Hi, I'm Rob and I'm from Anti, and we're using our patent to make the most comfortable helmets you'll ever wear. So about 18 months ago, I was out on the slopes and I was having a great time, but I realised a massive, massive problem. It's that everyone hated wearing helmets. We think that can't be right. Helmets are life-saving devices. It's what they're designed to do, and they do so literally every single day. We wouldn't drive without a seatbelt, so why would we ride without a helmet? Well, you ask people around the slopes and they say, oh, it doesn't fit, it bounces around on my head, it's really annoying to use, it's frustrating to pack, and worst of all, it destroys the experience on the mountain. We thought, that just can't be right. So we went about finding a solution. We went to the slopes and we realised that everyone who wasn't wearing a helmet actually wore a beanie. And even most people who wore helmets wore beanies anyway. So we got our solution. It's a beanie that's as safe as a helmet. It's soft, conforming, comfortable, and easy to pack. And the best bit of all, it's as safe as any other helmet. And we can prove that. Would you mind giving me a hand?
Sure. Here's a plank of wood I just conveniently had hiding under the desk there. I'm going to hit you over the head with this. That's the deal, right?
Yeah, nice and hard.
I'm going to go.
It worked first time.
It did. You ready?
Yep, start this.
Amazing. Would you believe in rehearsal, broke in half first time?
Yeah, it's been a long day.
Thank you for letting me hit you over the head repeatedly with
No
the
worries.
plank of wood.
Thank you for hitting me over the head.
Go to the gym.
Wow, and we've now got visual evidence that your head is also intact.
As intact as it was at the start. And so now we know it works. So there's 130 million participants of snow sports around the world. There's 57 new ski areas in China alone that was created just in 2017. And that's just our original market. There's heaps of other markets like cycling, BMX, scootering, and we also have a sister company called Janui, which is creating similar helmets for kids with epilepsy who are currently not catered for in the market. We're getting an 11-cent cost per click onto our landing page from some Facebook ads, and we're currently building our email list so we can launch on the 1st of November this year. So if you'd like to come along the ride with us as an investor, mentor, advisor, or just a friend we can ride with on the slopes, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
Alison, you visited us for an episode where there's been both blood and violence. Do you have any questions for Robert?
Sure. Well done. That was impressive. A lot of people who build startups suffer for their startup, and I think you suffered there. Very well done. I think key to any body tech innovation and health technology generally is how do you get it out there to market. So sounds like you started to build a consumer play, marketing, letting people know about it. How are you actually going to distribute this thing? It looks amazing, especially as I've just got my motorbike murder permit again.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways we can get it out there. Of course, it's a very hyper product. People don't believe it when they see it until you get sort of hit over the head repetitively with a piece of wood. So there's lots of marketing and viral marketing that works for us. And that's part of our plan is we're using Kickstarter. So the 1st of the 11th, we're going to launch Kickstarter. And it's a great way of launching in a very high profile, really big reach way. So that's the first goal. And then from there, we're going to organise our distribution partners and work from there to get it out into the world.
Leah, what about you? Do you see yourself or anyone you know using this?
Yeah, Rob, I think it's a great product. What I want to ask you about is Australia has diminishing snow levels, because of global warming. You're a kid from Brisbane, where it's really hot. You can't get snow often. Do you have? I mean, you should be partnering with companies in Canada and Switzerland and Austria and those sort of really big snow countries. Are you doing any of that sort of international reach stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We were in Queenstown just last week, actually, and so we've spent, which is the ski town in New Zealand. So we've been doing lots of that, and the community's quite small, funnily enough. About 1 in 3 people in Brisbane ski, and so everyone knows everyone. We've got some great contacts in the action sports industry through a lot of the different vendors and the different brands, and so we plan on leveraging those contacts that we have to work through the market from there.
So, Robert, I have a question for you. How do we know that you just don't have a really tough head?
Do you want to do it again?
No! Please join us in thanking Robert, everybody.
Thank you, Robert. Well, while our judges deliberate on which of our pitches most modified their hearts tonight, let's see how our guest chip implant recipient, is getting on with life as a cyborg. Garry.
Hey Ben, everything is going great here. We've had a successful implant. What Amir's going to do here is help you basically call your mother. This feels special, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Let's call Frank Borg's mother and get to it. What's going on? Yeah, Frank, that's Rick Astley. You've just been rickrolled, my friend. I'm so sorry, but as I say in the biz, that's internet television. Back to you at the desk, Ray-Ben.
Okay, it's that time of the night. Our judges are about to announce the winner of the pitch ring. Alison.
Ooh, Well, I want to thank you so much for your contributions. One of the things we both love, Leah and I, about working in this space is that everybody cares so much about patients and consumers, and it was so evident with all of your pictures tonight. I think what we really wanted to emphasise was the seriousness of the work that we're all doing in this space, and the award that we've chosen. The company is really benefiting consumers as well as clinicians, and therefore the overall health system. So over to Leah.
So after a huge deliberation, we really had to go with Navi.
Can I get to keep it this time?
Congratulations, Wei. You go into the running to compete in the grand finale where you could win some big prizes. Too big to mention. Thanks to our sponsors, Miscellaneous and To Be Confirmed.
Well, until science gives us immortality, making a mockery of time itself, that is all we have time for. So please thank the geniuses on our panel tonight, Alison Hardacre and Leah Heiss.
Next week, we talk co-founders, culture shocks and robots and find out how long we have until an android can present that startup show.
You didn't know? See you on the scrap heap, everyone.
Great work. Well done. How did you feel? How'd you go?
Yeah, I feel really nice. I was very happy with the questions. The judges really care about patients, and that's what we want to see.
How did you feel tonight? How did you think you went?
Really well. Had a great time. Tonight was a lot of fun. Met a lot of really cool people, and had a great time getting hit over the head.
You certainly did get it over the head many times. Here we are with our illustrious winner, Navi. Congratulations, amazing platform. Well done. How did you feel tonight?
Really excited. It's, well, first time in front of cameras as well, so it's a big deal, and of course it's testament to the effort that the team has put in as well, that we got here and where we are today, so it's great.